Well, welcome, Figge family. Glad you could join me today to go over your core report. Thank you for taking the time to fill it out, and it'll be a lot of fun as we go through it. I'll be asking you some questions, asking you to share a little bit behind some of your answers, and we'll just go step by step. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to interrupt and ask. I really want this to be a time that is good for you guys as a family, and helps you understand a little bit more about your family core values and core culture. So,
Awesome.
sound good? We ready to start?
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to be just scrolling through some of the pages and hitting the highlights as we do kind of a deep dive into your core report. But I wanted to start with this idea. Core values are often, there are those things that we hold most dear, the beliefs that matter deeply to us, and they act as a North Star. So, whether that's how we behave, how we interact with others, or even in our decision making, our core values are often the thing that is leading us in that way. So, leading us to those decisions, leading us to those interactions with our loved ones and with strangers, to be honest. So, that's how we're going to look at them today. These top values that you guys each have represent that core of who you are and why you do what you do, what motivates that. A couple things to consider about values. They can change. So if you were to take a personality test like Myers-Briggs or one of those things, our personalities tend to stay the same throughout our lifetime. If you're an extrovert, you're probably going to remain an extrovert, at least ending up on that side of the scale.
Are you
Um, but
kidding
our
me? Might be one.
right, but our values change because they're often based on three things, and we're gonna be talking about this in depthly. Sometimes our values are aspirational. Maybe we really, really value generosity, but that's not something that we're living out yet, but we really want to. So we're aspiring to be more generous. Sometimes they are innate. Maybe you've always been that person who can find the humor in everything. And so humor is a really top value for you because you've always been able to make friends that way or to reduce tension by using humor. So even from a little kid, you were the funny one. Or maybe your values are based on experience. So let's say you had a grandparent who just always modeled loyalty, was loyal to the family, was loyal to you, and you're like, I love that quality and I really want to emulate that. And sometimes it's based on experience the opposite way. Maybe you had a boss that was very disloyal and had to go through some hard experiences, and that has made loyalty a top value for you because you experience what it feels like to not be treated with loyalty. So values are aspirational, innate, and experiential. And as we talk about yours, I'm going to ask you to kind of think about them from that perspective. And I'm also going to be asking you just to think through, why are my top values my top values? So are they aspirational, innate, or experiential? And is there a story behind them? Is there a reason why these are so important to me? And we like to call that your origin story, your values origin story. So, Gretchen, you are going to go up first, and I'm going to get these on the screen for you. Um, and we're going to talk about two things. First, I want to look at the values, and then we use your core values to create what we call a core style. And I will talk about that after you had a chance to share with us a bit of your origin story behind these values. So, as we look at responsibility, courage, empathy, gratitude, and generosity, first of all, I want to know if you're like, yep, these really resonate and this is who I am. And then share with me a little bit why you think they're in your top five. And are they aspirational, innate, or experiential? And I've just given you a lot of questions, a lot of things to think through, and now the time is yours.
Yeah, it is a lot to think about. I definitely think those are all me. Um, and I think they're all either chosen. I don't think any of these are innate initially. Um, I would say courage jumps out at me right now because I just think about I have been such a scaredy cat in life, especially when I was younger, and courage matters to me because I had a quote that I looked at every day for years and years from Eleanor Roosevelt that said, do something you're afraid of every day.
Mm,
And so the more I did that, the more courage I had in life. And so that I think is the driver for that courage. Um, Responsibility, I talk about with my family all the time. My parents were crazy irresponsible. And so that was such an influencer to me to become a person of responsibility, to not be what I experienced. Um, so the opposite of maybe
right.
what I had seen. Um, Empathy. I think maybe that, I mean, I want to be a person of empathy because I know that changes relationship when you can empathize with somebody else. It gives you forgiveness, it gives you care for other people. Um, I know that empathy is like changes the way you perceive the world, and I think empathy actually makes you a happier person
Mm,
because it's when you're being empathetic with the people around you, you aren't as frustrated with the people around you.
mhm.
And so
Good
that's
point.
maybe a big picture of a few of my values.
Yeah. Before we move on, and thanks, Gretchen, for sharing, I want to hear from Lincoln and David. When you look at these, do you nod and say, "Oh yeah, that's Gretchen," or are there some maybe that you're like, "Wow, I'm surprised XYZ didn't show up," or do you think this is like who you know her to be?
You want to take it or do you want me to go first? Um, oh yeah, this is her. I mean, with responsibility being the number one, there is no doubt about that. Um, since the first day I met her. So that one has, and that's 32 years ago almost.
Don't
So
count. Don't
totally
count.
counted. Um, but that has been a dominating element. As a matter of
Mhm,
fact, she didn't mention it, but I think I know the story behind it because she talks about it probably once every couple of months. Doesn't necessarily know that she's talking about it,
mhm,
but I do think her upbringing was important, but I think there was a trigger point, and you can speak to that if you want.
Well, I think you're talking about my first job
Yes, at the
mhm,
Black
and
Eyed Pea.
at the Black Eyed Peas,
Yes,
working at the
exactly.
Pea.
I know exactly where that comes from.
And I would say that definitely was a trigger point, but holistically,
Totally, totally.
it comes from watching.
But that was like the
And
what would you
maybe
say?
it's because I was like, so I had a job and I worked, and they brought me in and they were like, you're not fast enough. You're not
mm,
moving well enough. And I had no idea. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I can do better. And I think maybe that's the moment when I was like, I don't want to be what I've seen.
Yeah,
And
mm.
so maybe it all just came together for me at that moment.
yeah. And I
So
feel like that
yeah,
was like,
yeah,
yeah,
that could be.
yeah, like where your
Yeah,
brain mutated.
yeah.
Yeah.
X-Men.
The mutation happened.
Yeah. How about
Yeah.
you, Lex? What do you think?
I think that all of it is true. Like,
Ah,
especially the courage part, just because she runs so many things and she has
Mhm.
like at the tippity top on all of them. That takes a lot of courage.
yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
yeah.
Yep. I love that. So what we do when we come up, when we use your core values to come up with what we call a core style, we look at the top 10. And what we do is you'll notice, Gretchen, on yours, each of our values is put into four different quadrants. Each quadrant has a color. You obviously are representing two colors. One being responsibility, which is that in that ethical quadrant. That quadrant asks the question, what is good and right in this situation? And obviously, you have a whole lot in inspired, which asks the question, what is the ideal in this moment? And how do we achieve that? So
Mm,
here's something super interesting about you. When we look at your quadrant blend, I was expecting, in fact, even when I was taking notes, I started to write this down. I was expecting inspired ethical, but that's not what we see. we see inspired productive. What that means is that you're following values, so number 6 through 10, are all in that productive quadrant, or most likely. And that asks the question, what's optimal? What's measurable? In other words, how do I achieve the ideal? And what is the process to get there? And I found that really intriguing because your very top one, which obviously you've shared is based on experience, really serves a foundation for values in a very different spot than in that ethical quadrant. Um, I don't know if you have a comment on that, but that stood out to me as like, wow, really strong number one value. And then all these other things might be more how you put that responsibility into action.
Yeah, I think that I was more surprised that there weren't any productive values in my top 5 because I am all about let's productivity and determination but I think maybe as I've gotten older, those are important to me, but some of these other values have grown in how it affects life as a whole. And so
Yeah,
that might be why I still, those are important, but those don't show up in my top 5.
sure, sure. Still
It's
how you
to me
get things done.
productive is
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, so I just thought that was really, really kind of neat, and I think speaks pretty loudly to that experience that has led you to responsibility. That's pretty core for
Yeah.
you. And of course, you have the core style that every young person wants. You are an influencer, and again, that is a person who sees the ideal and wants to help that become reality. How do we find a process to get there? I'm going to show your family your core styles and where they end up on our heat map once we've had a chance to look at everybody else's core values.
Awesome.
Gretchen, any other questions on that?
No, super interesting.
And our report obviously has these other parts, those driving questions that I spoke about, some strengths and weaknesses for each core style, and you guys can take a look at that on your own when you have a little bit more time. All right, David, you are up next. A bit of inspired, a whole lot of artistic. So again, inspired asks the question, what's ideal? Artistic asks the question, how do I engage the world?
Uh,
So that's sort of that primary question. So we start with wisdom, humor, creativity, faith, and optimism. So take a moment and share with us, why are these your top 5? What might be a story behind some of these? Are they innate, experiential, or aspirational?
oh, I absolutely disagree with humor.
Yeah.
I couldn't resist.
He says with a straight face.
I couldn't resist that. There was no way. That
That was
was
quick too.
such a softball for me. Um, so yeah, this is absolutely who I am. There's no question about it. It's interesting that I've got faith on the 4th level because that drives a lot in my mind of what happens next, but it also kind of makes sense from the wisdom side. And so that's an interesting mix to me, to be honest.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
but let's just start with the wisdom thing. Absolutely my number one. Um, that is not innate by any means. Extremely aspirational, but has been a pursuit of mine since early college. Um, and let me give you the real whys. One, I there's a great Bible verse that tells you to seek wisdom, and I want that, right? Like I want, or at least that's the understanding that wisdom is a pinnacle.
Mhm.
But in reality, I am not a super high introvert. I do take a lot of who I am and place it out into the world in a big way. And in doing so early on, I messed up so many things from
Mm.
relationships to events to making moves that were too early or almost never too late, but usually too early, um, where I felt a lot of pain.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
pain was on a personal level, not like it didn't bring me down, but I felt it
Yeah.
and I didn't like it.
Mhm.
And so I started asking the question in everything I do, is this wise? Am I being wise here?
Mm.
And that really started driving it and getting me into a position. So wisdom being at the top, it is, I'm seeking that at all times,
Yeah.
at all times. And again, it's to some degrees it's to protect myself, but being an extrovert, it also protects those around me because there's a lot that can happen with that. So that is what I pause on in life.
Yeah.
That is my pause point. Um, Alongside of that, however, if you think yourself too wise and you have no humor, oh man, you can be a real weenie. And
Mhm.
so I don't want that in my life.
Right.
So I like that mix. And that mix is something that's always what's the word I'm looking for? A point that I hope to leave behind with people.
Mhm.
That I'm both connective on the fun side, but I brought something to the table that might be able to help them. So yeah, this is definitely me. I want to get a little closer just so I can see the last one.
Sure.
Because I read it as chipmunks, but it's optimism. I was like, chipmunks? That's an interesting core value. Uh, yeah, optimism makes a lot more sense. Yeah, hope. I love hope.
Mhm.
And so yeah, all of that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Gretchen and Lincoln, thoughts on what David just shared?
I mean, he's always sharing wisdom with us and like guidance on what we should do. So I would say that's very true.
I agree. I agree. I mean, since the beginning, since we were dating, it was all about wisdom. Like,
Mhm.
okay, how is dating going? What does this look like? What can we do to be better together? To the point that we had 42 things. No,
No, 10 rules.
10 rules to dating.
42 was
42 was a different list.
this.
David had 10 dating rules that we actually brought into marriage.
Yeah.
Right? So we had a lot of rules, but it wasn't like, oh, this is what we have to do. It was like, how can we have a better life?
And how
Yeah.
can we get out of each other's way to be fully what we were designed to be?
Yeah.
Mm.
They
That's
weren't
excellent.
restrictive rules, they were freeing rules, is how I
Yeah.
would describe them.
Totally. Absolutely. And even to this day, things happen and we're like, oh, that didn't go great. What can we do to do that better in the future?
Yeah, do you want to hear one of our rules?
I do.
Okay, one of our favorites was don't say no or don't to the other person unless what they were doing was measurably evil.
Huh.
So even if something made me uncomfortable, if Gretchen wanted to do it, though I might be uncomfortable, she flourished in that. Why would
Right.
I get in the way of what she is designed to be? And
Mm.
so that was one of our favorites. So
Mhm.
we didn't restrict each other from being exactly who we were.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is that's beautiful.
It shaped our marriage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like it shaped our life to let each other be 100% who we are.
Yeah.
And trust me, in 30 years, you can definitely make each other uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So,
And you know what strikes me, as I was first looking at yours, David, and seeing, these measures of ideal and inspired, and obviously a lot of strength and engagement. I kind of saw wisdom and faith almost as your anchors.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing also is just this incredible intentionality that you know yourself to be somebody who engages. And so you want to do that with such intentionality. And that's where that wisdom and faith piece come in.
that's great insight. I
Yeah, for
totally
real.
agree.
Yeah.
And 100%. And I would even say the creativity comes
Mm.
without question from his childhood because
Oh, yeah.
he is the child of an inventor, a true inventor, NASA inventor.
Yeah.
And so he was surrounded by the idea of thinking different,
Yeah.
think different. And
Right.
even to this day, it's like, okay, what can we do we don't have to do it the way everybody does it. How can we do this
Right.
differently, and that plays into wisdom.
Yeah,
Don't you think?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah. So you use it together,
right.
and you also use humor in when you're talking about wisdom.
Yeah, I agree. I
That's
still don't know why that's on there.
right, clearly.
Yeah,
So
I still look at
he's he's the funny one. I'm always like, I'm sorry, I'm not very funny, but I'll bring my husband
it.
for us.
You're like, but I know someone who is.
I got someone for you.
Right.
The guy.
I got a guy. Yeah.
Right. And even this idea of optimism, David, your immediate response was, "Oh yes, I love hope," and I like the fact that you tie those two together because
Yeah.
optimism it can be a little bit thinner than that, right? True optimism is full of hope, but I thought that was again super intentional, and that is a great quality. Okay, so again, you're very much this artistic inspired. I want to engage others, and I want to do that to achieve an ideal. And so that core style is what we call a trailblazer. So somebody who's willing to step out, get things done, and making sure that those around you feel included, get to come alongside that. So again, we'll see that on the heat map after we get to talk with Lincoln. And one of the things that just made me smile, the first two, Gretchen and David, you guys were like two colors. Lincoln, you get the prize for being more than that. You embody some
They're both
different
little
things. And your family, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in depthly, but you have a lot of diversity. The only one that showed up twice is this idea of faith that David and Lincoln both have. I always like to add this caveat because it comes up often. If faith doesn't come up in our top 5 values, it doesn't mean we don't have faith. It just means that perhaps that's a foundation, right? Exactly. It's and sometimes it really bothers people. They get really anxious and tell me, but I need you to know. I'm like, that's okay. I understand. And we don't know what 6 through 10 look like. So,
Right.
but Lincoln, tell me about forgiveness, faith, justice, strength, and independence. Super neat grouping of values, particularly for a young person. So, what are your thoughts?
So for forgiveness, I've been going through some things in my personal life where I've been challenged and I've needed to forgive a lot of people and give them second chances. So I've put a lot of value in forgiveness and like giving people that hope that they can change
Hmm.
and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
then second one, faith. It feeds into forgiveness
Mhm.
because I have faith that these people can change. Like I have faith in that people will try to be the best that they can and faith that they will try to be better and change in a way that helps communities that they're a
Mhm.
part of. Justice is on the other side of that. I've
Yeah.
just wanted to be a lawyer my whole life. So,
Yeah.
um, strength, I think it also feeds into forgiveness for me because it
Mm.
takes a lot from me to forgive people. So I've needed to mentally be strong to be able to forgive these people. I
Mhm.
can't see the last one. Oh, and
Independent. Yeah.
yeah, I like doing my own thing.
Mhm.
I don't, I mean, I listen to these guys, but I do not always do what they say.
Mhm. And I would say your top 5 values in some ways reflect that. Um, sometimes children can just sort of mimic what their parents say or what their parents say the value should be. And I think the fact that you came out with your own very strong, nice job explaining those, by the way, indicates that. So my question for you, I literally wrote across the page, tell me about forgiveness. Um, to see that first um, is pretty unique. But I thought you did a really neat job of you're talking about forgiveness on both sides, having the strength within yourself to forgive, but also offering that hope, going a little bit back to what your dad said about optimism, that, I have hope that people can be forgiven and change. I have hope that I can be forgiven and change. And that is quite a mature way of looking at forgiveness. So that stands out to me.
Thank you.
And usually I let parents talk first, and I jumped in. David and Gretchen, tell me, is this how you see Lincoln? Which one of them might be innate? Is that justice innate because he's always wanted to be a lawyer?
So
This has been since
Just-
day one. That's
he's wanted to be a lawyer for years and years, and he's not old enough to have that many years. So, but I would say strength and independence show up a lot, because not just strength to do the things you're saying you want to do, but you have a lot of big goals, and you use strength in that, and strength of mind to stick with it. And that goes with independence. So, and we as parents love that he wants to be independent, because it means he has his own thought process.
Yeah.
Society is not influencing him.
Yeah,
His friends aren't telling him what to do or be. We celebrate independence.
Oh, for sure. I think that's a great word. That this is not just a reflection of what he would want us to probably want him to be. Is phenomenal to me.
Yeah.
Like that's so cool.
Yeah.
Because it allows us to it basically is telling me we're not in the way.
Yeah.
We're not getting in the way.
Yeah. Our goal as parents is to let him write his own story.
Yeah.
And it's encouraging to me to see he is writing his own story with his independent values.
Yeah.
Right.
And the forgiveness one is still interesting to me though. Because I don't know if that I'm just that one threw me off a little bit, seeing that at the top. But there's probably a million stories behind that I don't know.
I can think of a couple. Just when you were little, right? Like
A lot recently.
yes.
Fair.
But even from years and years ago, just little things that, happen with the neighbor kids or happen. And you have made a conscious effort to forgive those people around you, even when it's just little.
But I think that also speaks to something you said early on when you were talking to us about how this isn't a locked in, like a Myers-Briggs or something like that, where it's locked in. That having that at the top means it could be this moment of time where that's become a primary driver.
Right.
And it's a necessity. And so I think that this might be speaking to that in a lot of ways. Let's take it again.
And one thing that stands out to me is this idea of, and Lincoln, you've said, I've had things I've had to forgive recently, and I need to be working on this, and this is coming up over and over again. And it does reflect a little bit, I think, of Gretchen, your values, and David, yours as well, this idea of, and I'm going to be responsible to forgive well and to dive into this. I'm going to be intentional to make sure I think this through. When kind of the easy thing to do is either not forgive and stay angry, or just, sorry, and move on. Whereas what I heard from you, Lincoln, was this very intentional responsibility of saying, I'm going to think about this, and I'm going to expect action on both sides, my part and then the other person's part. So really interesting.
One more thing before we jump, if you're good.
Yeah.
There's a juxtaposition between my number 1 and his number 5.
Right. And your number 1 was wisdom.
With his independence.
Yeah.
That can cause some discord.
Sure. Yes.
Or some disconnect. Him and I have actually spoken about how to work through that, because I want to tell him wisdom.
Right.
But sometimes that falls on ears where it's like, well, I'm independent, I'm doing it my way.
Right.
Not as a negative. I look at independence as a big positive.
Right.
So we've created a flow where I speak wisdom, he acknowledges that he hears it, but then I back away and he decides, and I don't visit it.
Right.
That has become a really good flow in our relationship.
And I love that example, because that's exactly why we want families to partake in this. Because if you as a parent were like, Lincoln just won't listen to me and he's just not, acknowledging my wisdom, but when you get to say, you know what, it is a true value of my son to be independent, then you get to create those flows rather than this head to head where you guys don't want to be head to head. You just need to understand what values you each have. Yeah.
Yeah. And that
How it
flow has
works.
been so good for us.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
Yep. All right, Lincoln, you are what we call a founder. So, based on this idea of the ethical and productive quadrant. So, you want to find out what is good and right in every situation. That doesn't always mean like morality. It could, but it's really saying, what's the good and right way to treat people in this moment? What's the good and right way to behave? What's the good and right way to come at this situation requiring forgiveness? So that's that ethical question matched up with, and then how do we have a measurable so we can actually achieve that? So I want to do what's good and right, but I also want to have a process to get there. That is what that founder personality has, which in some ways makes sense. If you're founding something, if you're creating something, you're laying the foundation on what is good and right.
Yeah.
So, all right. So next, I want to just quickly look at, these are your top 5 shared values. So like I said, we looked at all 10, we mixed them together and saw where the overlap was. And I've already shared that the only 2 values in your guys' top 5 was that faith that David and Lincoln had. So it's obvious why that one came up first. But this idea of faith, wisdom, responsibility, forgiveness, and humor. Probably because while not you didn't share these in the top 5, some of them probably showed up in values 6 through 10. And kind of a neat look at your family. This idea of we each have our diverse values, but we also have a lot of unity. Any thoughts as you look at this, as you think about it as who you are as a family?
I would say faith for sure, even though it's not in my top 5, faith is really important to us as a family, and it is a guiding principle in our lives. I would definitely say wisdom and responsibility are interactive for us
Yeah.
because you don't want to just be wise. You want to have wisdom so that we act well.
Right. And responsibility. I mean, you live and die by that.
Yeah.
You get things
Mhm.
done. I mean, we see
Mhm.
that all the time with you.
Yeah.
Even though it
For
didn't
sure.
show up in your top 5,
Mhm.
all the time.
Yeah,
You're one
you
of the most
definitely
responsible
do.
people I know.
Yes. And so I definitely see those 3 very clearly in all of our lives together.
Yeah.
I mean, humor, none of us are funny, but David, so I don't know how.
That's not true. I think he's hilarious.
Totally funny, right?
You are now. Yeah, no, I look at this, I agree.
You're so funny. You
Thanks.
are.
Thanks, Mom.
Work on forgiveness some more. No, honestly, this is us. Like,
Yeah,
this
Yeah.
is us.
it fits really well.
It really does.
Which is really neat. And it feels very balanced, right? You have these ideal aspects, this ethical aspects, this creative, engaging aspects, and we know that as a family, you also have that productive part of you as well. So I think that's kind of neat. One of the things we encourage families to do with these is to create a family mission statement, to use some of that creativity to say, how can we do that? Like, are there phrases that would stand out? Can we turn some of these values into verbs and then, create a couple sentences? Do we pick 3 words or a word picture? And so the options are limitless, but it's a fun way for a family to say, okay, yep, we agree. These top 5 are us. And how can we verbalize that so that we remind ourselves of who we are? So that's kind of a natural takeaway of these top 5.
Awesome.
All right, I love your family heat map because you guys are all over the place. I'm going to see if I can reduce this. And here's, well, and there's 2 reasons why I like this. I'm going to show my cards a little bit. I like this because of what comes next in the report, which is the family culture, and we're going to talk about that. But I think when you look at this heat map and you have David at the top, so he's people at the top kind of like change. They're going to say, "Hey, let's try," and the worst that happens is we have to redo it and try again. People at the bottom, so Lincoln, a bit more decisive, a bit more like, I'm going to think this through and then decide and then act on that. And Gretchen, you're in the middle. You represent kind of these there's a tension between your top two values. The inspired and productive can pull at each other because you want the ideal, but you want a good process. But sometimes to have a good process, you have to give up the ideal. And but when I look at this, I see just a family with a lot of diversity, but who's making it work and values these things in each other and is honoring those things. And I think, David, your example about the wisdom and the independence is exactly what this heat map reflects. Is it's okay that we're different. That's a good thing. And how do we honor that? So,
Yeah.
and you're already using the language and the vocabulary to provide those connections. So I think that's great. Any thoughts as you guys see this? And then I have one more comment before we move on.
I just think it's fun. I think it's
I
fun that
agree.
we're unique.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want that for us.
I'm thrilled with that.
Yeah.
And so when I look at your family top 5 values and create the core style from that, it ends up being what we call an advocate. And an advocate is somebody who wants to, again, achieve that ideal in the moment, but use what's good and right to get there. And I couldn't help but smile that even when we look at your family top 5, it's yet another core style. And so you really do kind of hit all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Super fun. Okay. And now I have a strong belief as to why this all works so well. So when we talk about family culture, and you guys answered some questions in the core culture part of the assessment, every organization has a culture, whether that's a business, a classroom, a volleyball team, a community, a neighborhood, our country. We have a culture, and families have that as well. And so we asked you guys to look at your family culture across 4 measures. Communication, so how do we communicate? Do we feel free to share what's on our mind? Do we feel heard? Those sorts of things. Cohesion, what is our unity? Identity, who are we? Do we know who we are? And then what's our impact on others? And culture is where our values get to thrive. And if the culture is suffering, your values are probably suffering. But if your culture is thriving, your values thrive. And when I see your culture scores, and I'm going to reduce this a little bit, your family culture is thriving. When we look at communication, Gretchen and Lincoln, you are what we call heirs. If there are more than one child, we group them all together to provide some anonymity. You did not have that luxury because there's just you. But Gretchen and Lincoln, you literally gave perfect scores for communication. Almost all of you. David, you were a little bit less, which I want to talk about just because you're the optimist. But
I
really,
actually know why. I can actually exactly tell you why.
Yeah.
okay.
Because we had not yet created the flow.
When you took it.
When I
Yeah.
took the test, we had not yet created a flow between the independence and the wisdom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you feeling that tension.
Right. Right.
Wow. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Now you can be a full score.
Yeah. I know.
And-
100%. I think at this point I feel very heard.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also why we really like this assessment, and we ask families to take it again, because it's I get frustrated when people are like, this is a report card score and we got to see. That's not what it is. It's a temperature gauge. How are we doing right now? And David, you could say, hey, when we took this, we were still wrestling with this issue, and so at that point, I was a 19 in communication, and now I'd probably be a 25 or a 24, up at the top. And that's exactly why we like to take this one over and over again.
Yeah.
But your family culture is so strong that it allows your individual values to thrive and to be heard and to be respected.
Yeah.
And I think to see them hand in hand was really interesting, because it could be different. The difference of values could create some issues amongst these culture measures, and you guys didn't have that.
Well, I give credit to David and his wisdom because he's always looking for how can we then take action to be healthy.
Right.
And so that core value of his is a benefit to the family for sure.
Right.
You're looking like you're thinking, what's happening?
I'm always thinking.
Yes, you are. But what are you thinking?
I'm just thinking back through all of the things that got in like the way of communication in my mind.
Mm.
Yeah, so I've begun an exploration. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Is this new right now?
No, I'm just curious on my own thought process.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm exploring my own brain in the middle of
Yeah.
this. That's what this is designed to do, right?
That's
Like,
the great
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That means success in my mind.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that.
And Lincoln, I did just want to mention one thing. You probably, and you might notice this in your peers. I often see identity and impact lower for younger people because they just don't know that much about themselves yet. They're still figuring out, who am I? What do I want to be? How do I want to act? How do I interact? I think it's probably growing up in a family of intention, but also probably a sense of being thoughtful about who you are, that reflected such high scores in these areas. So that was a standout thing for me as well.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think I'm constantly changing
Mhm.
through seeing their experiences and experiencing my own thing and seeing how they deal with these things and putting it into perspective of how I would deal with it. So, I don't know. I like just doing it my way
Yeah.
about it
Well,
in my own sense.
if we do it right, you'll learn all the good stuff from us and do it better.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Hmm.
That's awesome. All right. Well, the next several pages just talk about each one of these independently and give you, and I appreciate this part of the report. They give you a definition so you know what we mean when we were talking about communication. So in this case, respectful sharing plus respectful listening. And then if it's an area in your family where you're like, you know what, we need a little more help, we need a little more focus on this, we provide 4 questions for each of these 4 areas, just so you can say, all right, we need a little help with, cohesion. And so we're going to dive into these questions and, what's an experience, a value, or a belief that we do share? Let's build that cohesion by starting there. So we give you a few prompts to help those conversations.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is our deep dive into values and your family culture. Any questions before we wrap
Yeah.
up?
How often should we do this?
Great question. We are experiencing a few technical difficulties on my end, so I apologize if I'm looking distracted. We're hoping my battery doesn't die. I would take the core culture assessment every year. I think to get into that regular rhythm of just saying, hey, let's check in. How are we doing on our impact? How are we doing on our communication? Are we still in a spot where our individual values get to thrive? For the other part, I would say give it 4 or 5 years and try those core values again. Talk about, hey, what experiences over the last 5 years have kind of impacted what my core values are. And I love the practice of saying, these 3 stayed the same and these two are different, and kind of looking at that. Why I doubt this would happen, but why is wisdom not in my top 5 anymore? What has happened that has changed that?
Yeah.
And we have some neat questions that go along with that to help families think through, okay, this has changed, and why is that? So
Very love it.
Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you for your
It's been
time.
great
Thank you.
for us to have a chance to kind of.
Oh, we're going to be doing a lot of talking. Well, at least I am.
yeah, and probably a lot of laughing.
And a lot of laughing.
Yeah.
So it's been really great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys, and thanks for being so open and sharing your story with me. I loved reading it in paper, but I even more enjoyed talking to you in person. So thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining me today.
See you guys.
Thank you very
All
much.
right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Bye-bye.